The judge slammed his gavel. Order in the court. Kirk Douglas refused to sit down. He stood in the jury box, pointing at the prosecutor, and said 5 words that could have put him in prison. "This man is lying." The courtroom exploded, and Kirk Douglas was just getting started. October 14th, 1967, Los Angeles County Courthouse, Department 47. A Monday morning like any other, except Kirk Douglas had been summoned for jury duty. Most celebrities got out of it. A phone call from a lawyer, a doctor's note, a scheduling conflict. Kirk could have done the same. He had films to make, meetings to attend, a career to manage. But Kirk showed up. He believed in the system. He believed that democracy only worked when citizens participated. He believed that serving on a jury was a duty, not an inconvenience. He was about to learn how wrong he was. The case seemed simple. James Washington, 22 years old, black, accused of stealing a watch from a department store. Value, $200. If convicted, James faced up to 3 years in prison. Kirk looked at the defendant, young, scared, wearing a suit that was clearly borrowed, too big in the shoulders, too short in the sleeves. His court-appointed attorney looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. The prosecutor, a man named Harold Whitmore, was the opposite. Confident, polished, expensive suit. He addressed the jury like he was performing Shakespeare. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is a straightforward case of theft. The defendant was seen in the jewelry department. The defendant was seen near the display case, and the defendant was apprehended outside the store with no receipt for any purchase." Whitmore paused dramatically. The evidence speaks for itself. Kirk listened. Something felt wrong. The defense attorney, a young man named Public Defender Martinez, stood up. He looked nervous, unprepared. "My client maintains his innocence. He was shopping. He didn't steal anything. That's all." He sat down. Kirk stared. That was the defense? That was everything? The prosecution called its first witness, the store security guard. Whitmore approached him. "Mr. Patterson, please tell the jury what you observed on September 15th. The security guard nodded. "I saw the defendant acting suspicious, looking around, nervous. He was near the jewelry counter for about 10 minutes. Did you see him take anything?" "I saw him reach toward the display case." Kirk leaned forward. "Reach toward. Not take, not steal. Reach toward." "What happened next?" "He walked out of the store. I followed him, stopped him in the parking lot." "Did he have the watch?" The security guard hesitated. "No, we didn't find the watch on him." Kirk blinked. "They didn't find the watch?" Whitmore moved quickly. "But the watch was missing from the display case, correct?" "Yes, and the defendant was the only person near that case." Another hesitation. "He was the only person I noticed." Kirk caught that too. The only person I noticed. Not the only person there. The defense attorney's cross-examination was pathetic. "Mr. Patterson, are you sure it was my client?" "Yes." "Okay. No further questions." Kirk wanted to scream. What about the fact that they didn't find the watch? What about other people in the store? What about any actual evidence? The trial continued. Another witness, a store employee who said James looked suspicious. No evidence, just looked suspicious. Kirk watched James Washington sitting at the defense table. The young man's hands were shaking. He kept looking at his attorney, hoping for something, anything. The attorney wasn't even paying attention. He was doodling on his notepad. During a recess, Kirk approached the defense attorney in the hallway. "Excuse me, I'm on the jury, so I probably shouldn't be talking to you, but I have to ask, what are you doing in there?" Martinez looked up, startled. "Excuse me? Your client. You're not defending him. You're not asking questions. You're not challenging anything." Martinez sighed. "Look, Mr. Douglas, I respect your work, but you don't understand how this works. I have 40 cases. 40. I met this client for the first time this morning. I don't have time to... You don't have time to defend an innocent man? Martinez's face hardened. Who said he's innocent? Who said he's guilty? Kirk shot back. They didn't find the watch on him. They have no evidence except a security guard who said he looked suspicious. And you're just going to let him go to prison? Martinez shook his head. This is how it works, Mr. Douglas. Welcome to the real justice system. He walked away. Kirk stood in that hallway, feeling something he hadn't felt in years. Rage. The afternoon session was worse. The prosecutor called James Washington to the stand. Kirk watched as Whitmore circled the young man like a shark. Mr. Washington, you say you were shopping. What were you shopping for? James's voice was quiet. I was looking at watches. For my father. His birthday is next month. So you admit you were looking at watches. Yes, but... And you were near the display case where the watch was stolen. Yes, but I didn't. And you left the store without buying anything. I couldn't afford the one I wanted. I was going to save up and... Whitmore cut him off. No further questions. The defense attorney stood up. Kirk waited for him to repair the damage. No questions, Your Honor. Kirk's hands clenched. James Washington looked at the jury. His eyes found Kirk's. In that moment, Kirk saw something. Not guilt. Fear. The fear of a young man who knew the system was about to crush him, and there was nothing he could do about it. The judge began his instructions to the jury. Kirk wasn't listening. He was thinking about everything he'd seen. No evidence. A lazy defense attorney. A prosecutor using suspicion and race instead of facts. This wasn't justice. This was a railroad job. The jury began to file out toward the deliberation room. Kirk didn't move. Mr. Douglas? The bailiff gestured toward the door. The jury room is this way. Kirk stood up in the jury box. No. The word fell like a bomb in the silent courtroom. The judge looked up from his papers. Excuse me? Kirk didn't sit down. His voice carried across the room. I can't deliberate on this case, Your Honor, because this man hasn't received a fair trial. The courtroom erupted, voices shouting, the gavel slamming. Order! Order in the court! Kirk kept talking. There is no evidence. They didn't find the watch on him. They didn't see him take the watch. All they have is a security guard who thought he looked suspicious. Kirk pointed at the prosecutor. This man isn't prosecuting a crime. He's prosecuting a skin color, and everyone in this room knows it. Whitmore jumped to his feet. Your Honor, this is outrageous. I demand this juror be held in contempt. The judge's face was purple. Mr. Douglas, you will sit down immediately, or I will have you removed and charged with contempt of court. Kirk looked at the judge. Then charge me. The room went dead silent. Kirk continued. I've sat here for 2 days watching a young man's life get destroyed. His attorney doesn't care. The prosecutor is using innuendo instead of evidence. And you, Your Honor, you've let it all happen. Kirk turned to face the courtroom. This is supposed to be a court of law, justice, equal treatment. But what I've seen here isn't justice. It's a system designed to convict people who can't afford to defend themselves. Kirk looked at James Washington. This man deserves better, and if standing up and saying so puts me in jail, then that's a price I'm willing to pay. The judge was shaking with anger. Bailiff, remove this man from my courtroom. 2 bailiffs approached Kirk. He didn't resist. As they led him toward the door, Kirk turned back. I'll be posting bail in about an hour. And then I'm going to hire the best defense attorney in Los Angeles for Mr. Washington. This trial isn't over. Kirk Douglas spent 4 hours in a holding cell that afternoon. Contempt of court. His lawyer got him released on bail. The next morning, James Washington had a new attorney, Robert Shapiro's mentor, one of the most expensive criminal defense lawyers in California. Kirk paid every penny. The new attorney requested a mistrial based on ineffective assistance of counsel. The judge, facing potential appeals and publicity, granted it. 3 months later, James Washington was retried. This time, with proper representation, the holes in the prosecution's case were exposed. The security guard admitted he'd been focused on James from the moment he entered the store. Other customers near the display case were never interviewed. The watch was eventually found in a back storage room, miscounted in inventory. James Washington was acquitted. After the verdict, James found Kirk waiting outside the courthouse. "Mr. Douglas, I don't know what to say. You didn't know me. You had nothing to gain. Why did you do it?" Kirk looked at him. "Because I sat in that jury box and watched the system try to destroy you, and I couldn't pretend I didn't see it." Kirk put his hand on James's shoulder. "What happened in that courtroom wasn't about you. It was about power. People with power crushing people without it. And the only way that changes is if someone stands up and says, 'No.'" Kirk smiled. "Today, I said no. Tomorrow, maybe you say no for someone else." James's eyes were wet. "I will. I promise I will." James Washington kept that promise. He went back to school, pre-law, then law school, then the district attorney's office, then the bench. In 1995, James Washington became the first black judge appointed to the Los Angeles Superior Court, Department 47. The same courtroom where Kirk Douglas had stood up for him 28 years earlier. At his swearing-in ceremony, Judge Washington told the story. "I was 22 years old, accused of a crime I didn't commit. My attorney didn't care. The prosecutor saw my skin color, not my innocence. I was going to prison for something I didn't do." Judge Washington paused, and then Kirk Douglas stood up, a movie star, a man with everything to lose. He stood up in that jury box and said, "This man is not getting a fair trial." Judge Washington's voice cracked. "He went to jail for me that day. He paid for my defense. He believed in me when no one else did." He looked at the audience. Kirk Douglas, 80 years old now, was sitting in the front row. "Every day I sit on this bench, I think about what Kirk Douglas taught me. Justice isn't automatic. It requires courage. It requires people willing to stand up, even when it costs them something." Judge Washington looked directly at Kirk. "Mr. Douglas, you didn't just save my life. You showed me what justice is supposed to look like. And I've spent 30 years trying to live up to your example." Kirk stood up slowly. The audience applauded. The two men embraced at the front of the courtroom. Reporters asked Kirk for a comment afterward. He shrugged. "I just said what everyone in that room was thinking. James didn't steal anything. It was obvious. I just couldn't keep my mouth shut about it." The reporter pressed. "But you went to jail. You risked your reputation." Kirk laughed. "Jail was 4 hours. My reputation survived. But James? He was looking at 3 years for a crime he didn't commit. 3 years that would have destroyed his life." Kirk's expression turned serious. "What kind of man sits quietly and watches that happen? Not me. I hope not anyone." The reporter asked if Kirk would do it again. Kirk smiled. "Every single time. And sometimes, if you look closely at the old photographs from Hollywood's golden age, you can still see it. Not the fame, not the awards, but the look in a man's eyes when he chose principle over comfort." Kirk Douglas played tough guys on screen, but off-screen, he was tougher. In an industry built on pretending, his courage was the only real thing that lasted. Is there a moment in your life where you wish someone had stood up for you? Or a moment where you stood up for someone else? Hollywood has many secrets, but these are the ones worth telling. If you want to know the real stories, the ones they didn't put in the magazines, you're in the right place. We are peeling back the curtain on the man who never bent. If this story moved you, hit that like button and subscribe to Kirk Douglas, the man who never bent. We are just getting started. There are stories about Bert, about Spartacus, and about the moments that defined a legend. You don't want to miss what's coming next. Leave a comment below. What would you have done in Kirk's position? I'll see you in the next video. Never bend.